I took a night shift at an abandoned hospital. The first thing I heard at St. Vincent's Hospital was a heart monitor. Beep, beep, beep. The problem was that St. Vincent's had been abandoned for 11 years. There were no patients, no doctors, no electricity. And according to the man who hired me, there wasn't supposed to be anyone inside the building except me. I learned later that he was lying, but by then, I had already spent 6 hours alone in that hospital, and someone or something had already started moving patients through the halls. I took the job because I needed the money. That's the embarrassing part. There was nothing brave about me walking into that hospital at 10:47 on a Friday night. I wasn't some paranormal investigator. I didn't believe in ghosts. I wasn't looking for an adventure. I just needed $400. That was what they offered me for one night of security. One night, midnight to 8 in the morning. The property was scheduled for demolition in the following week, and the owner wanted someone there to make sure nobody broke in and started stripping copper or vandalizing the place. The hospital had been closed since 2013. St. Vincent sat at the edge of a small town, surrounded by trees and an old chain-link fence. The place looked dead. 7 stories of dirty windows, cracked concrete, rusting fire escapes. The big red letters above the entrance were missing several pieces. All that remained was St. Vincent's Memorial. I met the property manager in the parking lot. His name was Mr. Harlan. He was an older man with a gray beard and a brown coat. He handed me a ring of keys. Main entrance locks automatically at midnight, he said. Okay, you'll have access to the lobby, security office, basement, and first 3 floors. Only 3. He looked toward the hospital. That's all you need. I laughed. He didn't. Then he gave me one more instruction. Whatever you hear from the 4th floor, don't investigate. I thought he was joking. Why? He stared at me for a few seconds. Because there's nothing up there worth finding. Then he got into his truck and drove away. I stood there watching his taillights disappear. I remember thinking, what a strange way to describe an abandoned floor. I should have gone home. Instead, I went inside. The lobby smelled like wet concrete and old medicine. My flashlight beam moved across overturned chairs, broken vending machines, and a reception desk buried beneath dust. There was an old wall clock behind the desk. Its hands were frozen at 2:17. I checked my phone. 10:58. I found the security office and turned on the battery-powered monitor system Harlan had left for me. Most of the cameras were dead, but 6 still worked. Lobby, emergency entrance, parking lot, basement, 1st floor, 2nd floor. I sat down in a chair and opened the bag I brought with me. Sandwich, coffee, phone charger. Nothing exciting. For the first hour, nothing happened. At midnight, I heard the main doors lock behind me. Click. I looked at the camera. The lobby was empty. I leaned back. Easy money. That was when the elevator moved. I heard the cables groan somewhere behind the wall. Then, ding, the elevator doors opened. I stared at the hallway. Nobody stepped out. I checked the monitor. The elevator camera was dead. I walked over to it. The elevator was sitting on the 1st floor with its doors open. Inside was a wheelchair. Old, rusty, one wheel slowly turning. I remember staring at it for almost a full minute. Then I laughed at myself. Air conditioning, I whispered, except there was no air conditioning. The building had no power. I closed the elevator doors and went back to the security office. At 1:34 a.m., someone called the hospital. I know how that sounds. An abandoned hospital. No phone service. No staff. Yet the desk phone rang. Rang. I nearly fell out of my chair. I stared at it. Then it rang again. Rang. I picked it up. Hello? Static. Then breathing. Slow breathing. Someone was on the other end. Hello? A little girl's voice whispered, "Are you the night nurse?" I froze. No. Silence. Then she said, "Then you shouldn't be there." The line went dead. I immediately called Harlan. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. I checked the building cameras. Nothing. Then I noticed something. The basement camera was showing a hallway I'd never seen before. I leaned toward the monitor. A hospital corridor. White walls. Fluorescent lights. A row of doors. And at the end of the hallway stood a little girl. She was wearing a hospital gown. Bare feet. Long black hair covering most of her face. I stared at the screen. Then the image flickered. She was gone. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my flashlight and headed toward the basement. I told myself there was an explanation. There had to be. Maybe an old recording. Maybe the camera system had been hacked. Maybe someone had broken in. Anything was better than believing what my brain was telling me. The basement was colder than the rest of the building. Much colder. My flashlight swept across pipes, electrical panels, and piles of abandoned equipment. I found the camera. It was pointed at a wall, not the hallway from the monitor. I checked the cable. Dead. No signal. I was about to leave when I heard something. Beep. I stopped. Beep. It came from behind me. I slowly turned. There was an old patient monitor sitting on a metal cart. The screen was black, but the speaker was making the sound. Beep, beep, beep. I stepped closer. The monitor suddenly lit up. A green line appeared across the screen. Then words. Room 417. I backed away. I knew what floor 417 meant. Fourth floor. The floor Harlan told me not to investigate. The monitor beeped again. Then the screen changed. Patient transfer requested. I heard footsteps above me. Running footsteps. Fast. I ran back upstairs. At 2:03 a.m., I locked myself inside the security office. I kept telling myself that I was going to leave. I would call the police. I would climb out a window if I had to. Then the security monitors changed. Every camera went black, except one, the fourth floor camera. I hadn't even known there was a fourth floor camera. The hallway was visible. The same hallway I'd seen in the basement. At the end stood the little girl. This time, she wasn't looking away. She was looking directly into the camera. Then she lifted her hand and pointed toward the screen. Behind me, I slowly turned. Nothing. I looked back. She was closer. I could see her face now. She was pale. Her lips were blue, and there was a dark mark around her neck. She pointed again. Behind me, then the monitor displayed. Room 417. I heard something outside the security office. A soft dragging sound. Something being pulled across the floor. I held my breath. The dragging stopped outside my door. Then came 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't move. A voice whispered from the other side. Night nurse. It was a little girl. I covered my mouth. The handle slowly turned. I had locked it. The handle turned again. Harder. Then stopped. Silence. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. Finally, I heard footsteps moving away. I looked at the camera. The little girl was standing at the end of the hallway. But this time she wasn't alone. There were people behind her. Dozens of them. Patients. Doctors. Nurses. All standing completely still. All staring at the camera. At 2:17, the entire hospital came alive. Lights flickered on. 1 floor at a time. 4th. 3rd. 2nd. 1st. The elevator dinged. Then the intercom crackled. A woman's voice echoed through the building. Code blue. Room 417. I didn't think. I ran. I ran toward the elevator. The doors opened. Inside was the same wheelchair. But now there was something sitting in it. A nurse. She was facing away from me. Her head was hanging forward. I stepped backward. The elevator doors began closing. Then the nurse lifted her head. Slowly. Too slowly. She turned toward me. Her face was burned. Her eyes were completely black. And she smiled. The door shut. I ran for the stairs. I don't remember climbing the first 3 floors. I only remember reaching the 4th. The hallway was exactly like the camera. Clean, bright, perfect. No dust, no decay, no broken windows. It looked like the hospital was operating normally. I heard people talking, phones ringing, doctors walking, a baby crying somewhere. I looked down at my hands. My flashlight was gone. I was wearing a white hospital uniform. I stumbled backward. A nurse walked past me. She didn't acknowledge me. A doctor shouted, "Room 417. We're losing her." I followed them. I don't know why. Maybe because I wanted answers. Maybe because I was already trapped. Room 417 was at the end of the hall. The door was open. Inside was a little girl lying in a hospital bed. The same girl from the camera. A doctor stood beside her. A nurse held an oxygen mask over her face. Her heart rate's dropping. The monitor screamed, "Beep." The little girl opened her eyes. She looked directly at me and whispered, "You're late." Then everything went black. I woke up on the floor of the security office. It was 3:06 a.m. The monitors were normal. The hospital was dark again. My clothes were covered in dust. For several seconds, I couldn't remember where I was. Then I saw something on the desk, a medical chart. I picked it up. The patient's name was Emily Harper, age 9, room 417. Date of admission, October 14th, 2013. Date of death, October 14th, 2013. Cause, cardiac arrest. But beneath that was another note, handwritten. Nurse failed to respond to emergency call. I stared at the words. Then something clicked in my memory. The little girl had called me the night nurse. I looked at the clock. 3:17 a.m. The wall clock in the lobby had stopped at 2:17, but this clock said 3:17. Then the intercom crackled. Code blue. I stood up. Room 417. I grabbed the keys. I was done being afraid. If that hospital wanted me to go upstairs, I was going to find out why. Room 417 was locked. I tried the key. It opened. Inside was an old patient bed. Nothing else. No girl. No doctor. No equipment. Just an empty room. On the wall was a small child drawing. A house. A tree. 3 people holding hands. And 1 person standing outside. I stepped closer. The person outside the house had been drawn in black. Underneath it, in a child's handwriting, "He doesn't let U.S. leave." Then I heard a voice behind me. That's what she drew before she died. I turned. Mr. Harlan stood in the doorway. I nearly screamed, "You!" He looked exhausted. "I knew you'd come up here. What is this place?" He looked at the drawing, then at me. "Did you see her? Emily?" He nodded. "Yes." He closed his eyes. "Then it's starting again." "What is starting?" He stepped into the room. In 2013, there was a fire in the West Wing. The hospital evacuated most of the patients. He paused. Emily couldn't walk. So the night nurse was supposed to take her. I looked at the chart. The nurse failed to respond. Harlan shook his head. That's what the hospital reported. I stared at him. What really happened? He didn't answer. I stepped toward him. What really happened? Finally, he whispered. The nurse locked the door. My stomach tightened. Why? Because she was afraid. Afraid of what? Harlan looked toward the hallway. Her husband. I didn't understand. Then I heard footsteps. Heavy footsteps. Coming down the corridor. Harlan's face went white. He found her. Who? The man Emily drew. The footsteps stopped outside the room. Harlan grabbed my arm. Don't look at him. The door slowly opened. A man stood in the hallway. Tall, wearing an old hospital orderly uniform. His face was hidden in shadow. He was holding a ring of keys. He looked at Harlan, then at me, and smiled. Harlan whispered, "Run." We ran. Down the corridor. The man followed. His footsteps were slow, calm. He didn't need to hurry. Every time we turned a corner, he was somehow closer. We reached the stairwell. Harlan shoved the door open. Go! We ran downstairs. The lights exploded behind us one by one. Pop, pop, pop. The man was coming. I could hear his keys. Jingling. Getting closer. We reached the second floor. Harlan suddenly stopped. Wait. What? He pointed toward the wall. There was a door I'd never noticed. It had no handle, only a small metal slot. Harlan pulled a key from his pocket. He inserted it. The door opened. Inside was a tiny room filled with old files, patient records, security tapes, photographs, newspaper clippings. Harlan started digging. Come on. What are you looking for? This. He pulled out an old VHS tape. Written on it, October 14th, security. We found an old monitor. Harlan inserted the tape. The footage began. The hospital hallway. The time stamp read 2:17 a.m. Emily's room. A nurse entered. Then a man followed her. The orderly. He grabbed the nurse. She fought him. Emily screamed. The nurse ran out. She locked the door and left Emily inside. The man stayed. He stood beside Emily's bed. Then something happened. The lights went out. The video distorted. When the picture returned, the orderly was gone. Emily was sitting upright, staring directly at the camera. Then she whispered something. The audio was barely audible. I turned the volume up. Her voice came through. He's not dead. The tape ended. Harlan looked at me. After that night, 12 people disappeared. What? Patients, nurses, security guards. You said the hospital was evacuated. It was... Then where did they go? Harlan didn't answer. The lights in the room went out. We heard keys. Right outside. Harlan whispered, He's here. The door slammed open. The orderly stood there. I saw his face, and I understood. He wasn't a ghost. Not exactly. His face looked like it had been burned years ago. But underneath the burns was something worse. His skin looked stretched, as if someone had pulled it over a skull that didn't quite belong to him. He smiled. Emily is waiting. Harlan stepped between us. You took her. The orderly tilted his head. No. His voice sounded like several voices speaking together. She chose me. Harlan raised the VHS tape. You killed them. The orderly laughed. Then he lunged. Harlan pushed me through the doorway. Run. I ran. I heard a scream behind me. Then silence. I didn't stop. I ran down the stairs. First floor. Lobby. The front doors were locked. I pulled the handle. Nothing. I hit the glass. Help. No cars. No people. Then I remembered something. The emergency exit. I ran toward it. A red sign above the door read, Exit. I pushed it open. It led into the parking lot. Cold air hit my face. I ran. I didn't look back. I reached my car, unlocked it, started the engine, and drove. I didn't stop until I reached the gas station 10 miles away. The police found Harlan the next morning. He was alive. Barely. They found him in the basement. He had a broken arm and several cuts on his face. When they asked him what happened, he told them everything. The police searched the hospital. They found no orderly, no Emily, no missing patients, nothing. But they found the files and the security tape. That was enough to reopen the investigation. The truth came out slowly. The orderly's name was Daniel Voss. He had been a maintenance worker at St. Vincent's. He was suspected of murdering several patients, but he disappeared the night of the fire. Emily's mother had spent years believing the hospital had failed her daughter. She never knew what really happened until the police found something else. A locked room beneath the 4th floor. Inside were personal belongings belonging to 14 missing people. 14, including Emily's necklace and Daniel Voss's uniform. But there was no body. Not his, not Emily's, Not anyone's. 3 months later, St. Vincent's was demolished. I thought that was the end. It wasn't, because 2 weeks after the demolition, I received a letter. No return address. Inside was a photograph. It showed the hospital hallway. Room 417. The picture had clearly been taken after the building was destroyed, but the room was still there, perfectly intact. And Emily was standing in the doorway. On the back of the photograph were 4 words. Thank you for coming back. I almost threw it away. Then I noticed something. There was a second person in the photograph, standing behind Emily. The orderly, Daniel Voss. But this time he wasn't looking at Emily. He was looking at me. I turned the photograph over again. A second line had appeared underneath the first. He can't follow you anymore. I stared at it. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Nobody spoke. Just static. Then I heard a little girl's voice. He's gone. I swallowed. Emily? Yes. What happened to him? Silence. Then she whispered. He opened the wrong door. The call ended. I never heard from her again. It's been 6 years since that night. I still don't believe in ghosts. At least, that's what I tell myself. But there's one thing I can't explain. Every October 14th, at exactly 2:17 in the morning, my bedroom door opens by itself. Just a few inches. Never more. I used to be terrified. Then one year, I finally understood. Emily wasn't trying to get into my room. She was showing me something. Because one October 14th, I stayed awake. I watched the door open. And on the other side was a little girl in a hospital gown. She looked exactly the way she had in the hospital. But she wasn't afraid. She smiled. And behind her was a long hallway. Bright lights. White walls. Room 417 at the end. I whispered, "Is he there?" Emily shook her head. "No." "Then why are you here?" She looked over her shoulder, then back at me. "Because you were the first person who came when I called." I felt tears fill my eyes. "I couldn't save you." Emily smiled. "You did." Then she stepped backward. The hallway disappeared. My bedroom door slowly closed. And for the first time in 6 years, I slept through the night. The next morning, I found something beside my bed. A small silver necklace. It had been missing for 13 years. And attached to it was a tiny piece of paper. 3 words. I'm finally home. I never found out what happened to Daniel Voss. Maybe he disappeared. Maybe he died. Maybe some things really don't belong in our world. But I know this. If you're ever driving through a small town and you see the ruins of an abandoned hospital and you hear a heart monitor beating somewhere inside, don't go looking for the source. Because sometimes the dead aren't calling for help. Sometimes they're calling to make sure someone finally answers.